Hello, everyone. My name is Sako, and welcome back to another episode of Spin for Style, the series where I spin a wheel to decide the style of my sim. So, you know, let's go to the wheel.
Okay, we are back at the wheel today. We're gonna give it a spin. We're gonna get something really good. I know it. It's gonna be real good. That's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
So we are in, we're making our punk sim. And I really I want to use this time to educate not only myself, but you guys on the style that I'm doing because and I've mentioned this before, but I do a good amount of research before I make a sim, so I know exactly what I'm trying to achieve and why. So I figured I could start sharing that information here because I just think it could be fun. So I think punk is such a perfect style to start doing this on too, because the history of punk is actually really super interesting, especially to me. Because at its core, punk is about individuality and rebellion, specifically rebellion against the systems that hold us down. So punk first emerged in the mid 1970s in London as an anti fashion. It featured outside clothing that was made to look broken down. And part of the reason for this was that people who pioneered this style were young people who didn't have a lot of money. So they took what they had and made it their own. But it's also important to note that this fashion is actually a fusion of two scenes. Because in New York, at places like the iconic club CBGB and bands like the Ramones and television were creating raw, minimalist looks, like the ripped jeans, leather jackets, and simple band tees. So it's more of an artistic, down and out uniform. Meanwhile, in London, designers like Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaurin were masterminds. Their boutique called Sex was a laboratory for punk fashion. They actively designed clothes to shock and provoke. They sold ripped clothing held together by safety pins, fetish wear made of rubber and PVC, and t-shirts printed with anarchist symbols and controversial slogans. And when I say controversial, I mean controversial. Um, this London style was more aggressive and political from the start, directly spitting in the face of the polished disco and rock royalty of the time. But also, everything about punk is about standing out and expressing your disinterest with the status quo with your style. They rip their pants to intentionally show their dirty legs, and they use safety pins to attach bits of fabrics, and they use padlocks as neck chains. When the first pioneers of punk fashion made the decision to dress like this, they weren't thinking, I want to be punk. They were thinking, I want to show the world that I don't care what's considered normal. Which, and this is a bit of a tangent, but that is one of the biggest reasons I love fashion and style. I'm such a communications nerd. One of my favorite things to do is analyze how expression and media reflect the minds of people in society. Because at its core, fashion is a form of communication. Every day when we put on our clothing, we're communicating something to other people. It could be something as obvious as a t shirt with your favorite band on it, or something as abstract as the way you part your hair. So when we think about that in relation to punk and specifically punk fashion, when punk was first being pioneered, they wanted to loudly and proudly tell everyone that they did not care what they were supposed to do. They ripped their fabric when at the time fabric was seen as something to keep pristine. They added piercings to their face in places that grossed others out, and they made their hair tall and spiky with different colors, which in my sim I put that mohawk on her with the blue because I thought that was my only mohawk option, and I don't even know why I didn't realize this, but we have a mohawk from Life and Death. So I do go back and change it to that mohawk because I the textures on the base game hairs, especially the ones that came out with the game, are so bad. So I used the blue mohawk for one of her outfits, and the rest of them just have the mohawk from Life and Death. But I just think it looks a little better. Anyway, so back to the punk. It wasn't just about being thrifty, all they're like tearing up their clothes and putting them together. It was a full-blown rejection of consumer culture. Why buy a new shirt when you could make a more powerful statement by cutting up an old one and writing your own message on it? That's where the tradition of band patches and political slogans sewn into jackets came from. They also co opted and twisted existing symbols. Tartan, which is associated with the British aristocracy and orderly school uniforms, was ripped apart and made aggressive. Doc Marten boots, originally designed for postal workers and policemen, the very system they rebelled against, were stolen and adopted because they were tough and intimidating. They wanted to push every boundary they could. This is also reflected in the music associated with the style. And it's also why you often see pictures of people in the punk scene at protests and fighting for change. Of course, as time goes on, everything evolves. Punk is very similar in a lot of ways and also very different in a lot of ways. By the 1980s, punk had already splintered into powerful subgenres, each with its own fashion code. Hardcore punk in the US became faster and more intense. The fashion followed suit, becoming more functional for mosh pits, band tees, hoodies, shorts, skate shoes. It was less about decoration and more about utility. And if you've ever been to like a punk rock show, you know that's so important. Anarcho punk took the political messaging and even further. Think all black clothing, militaristic styles, and jackets covered in hand painted patches about anarchy and animal rights. And then punk pop in the 90s, it brought the style to the mall with studded belts, wallet chains, and pop punk band tees becoming mainstream, sanitized version of that original rebellion. Today, that DIY spirit is alive and well in everything from high fashion runways to kids customizing their thrift store finds on TikTok. The tools have changed, but the desire to tear things apart and rebuild them personally is the same. We have several subcultures in the punk genre that all show individual expression in their own ways, but at its core, punk is about rebellion. It's about pushing the boundaries to in the world of the things that hold us down, which is why I love punk. I would not say my style is punk very much, but I love punk as a culture because of the way that it just throws everything in the face of the people who build these societies. So yeah, that's my sim. So yeah, you can see that I changed the mohawk. I got just a nice leather jacket for her formal wear. I put a bunch of tattoos on her arm to kind of do that like patchy tattoo. And I kind of wanted to make it seem like she's sometimes like tattooed herself and like doodled the tattoos on herself. So I used some of those like bad tattoos from Business and Hobbies, but yeah, I think she turned out pretty cool. So, thanks so much for stopping by, guys. If you like what you see, I post videos every Monday or Tuesday and Friday. So, yeah, go ahead and subscribe or even leave a like, whatever you want to do if you think the video deserved it. Thanks so much for stopping by. Have a wonderful rest of your day.